this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along here with Tolliver. Hi, Tolliver.
Jeremy, I've been in therapy for 7 years. I've never gotten to lie on a couch. What's going on?
Now you get to talk about it, listen to it for the next hour.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a few words to you. You tell me if they stress you out or cheer you up.
Okay.
Holiday season.
Cheer me up.
Social media.
Stress.
Cyber Monday.
A lot of stress.
Pandemic.
Cheer me up. No, I'm just kidding. Stress me out.
I think everyone would probably be stressed out by that.
Yeah.
This is a stressful time of year for many people. It is a perfect time for us to focus on something that is a very serious issue all year long, which is our mental health. Here in the United States, the number of people experiencing mental health problems like depression, anxiety, and addiction has been steadily rising since the start of the COVID pandemic. So this hour, we are asking listeners, how do you tend to your mental health, and do you have access to the care you need? Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. That is 844-464-3353. Now, of course, not everyone who calls makes it onto the show, but thanks for leaving voicemails. We do listen. Here are some great ones from last week's episode when we asked, do you care about a company's political stances?
Hi, my name is Corey. I'm from Montana.
My name is Nancy Shane. I am from Lincoln, Nebraska.
My name is Calvin. I'm calling from beautiful Excelsior, Minnesota.
My name is Anita Robertson. I live in Blackstone, Massachusetts. I'm very concerned about the politics of the companies I buy from.
I'm a bartender at a country western bar. Gay bars are a humongous market for Bud Light, and it's ridiculous that people got that bent out of shape for this.
I love listening to the music of Richard Wagner. Wagner was very anti-Semitic. Of course, he's dead now, but I still enjoy his music. So sometimes we just have to get over it.
Talk is really cheap, and what a company puts in their marketing isn't super relevant to me. I don't really care about what a company has to say about its values. I want to see what they do.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in. So this hour, again, our question is, how do you tend to your mental health, and do you have access to the care you need in your community? Let's meet our panel guest. Joining us from KNPR's studio in Reno, Nevada, Mayor Hillary Schieve, who's also president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Mayor, welcome to The Middle.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeremy.
It is great to have you. And from Kansas City, we're joined by Jason Kander, former Secretary of State in Missouri, an Army veteran, and author. His most recent book is Invisible Storm, A Soldier's Memoir of Politics and PTSD. Jason Kander, great to have you here as well.
Good to be here.
Well, before we get to calls, let me ask both of you a few questions. Mayor Schieve, as we said, you're the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. You recently got together with the other mayors in your conference in Washington, D.C., and called mental illness America's number one crisis. Tell me, why do you think that is? Why is it the number one crisis?
Sure. First of all, Jason, so nice to kind of meet you. Finally, I'm a huge fan, just so you know. I followed you for years.
Thank you very much.
And just respect you
that's
greatly.
kind. Thank you so much.
Huge fan. That's a great question. I've been saying this actually for a long time. And I think, we all know that there's a massive stigma when it comes to mental health. And it's not just a national crisis, it's a global crisis. But it is really, really tragic that, we're allowing people to die on our streets. Just the way that our healthcare system works. It's a true tragedy. And I don't think people understand the magnitude of mental health and how it affects cities and communities. And we have been failing for a very, very long time. So I took Mayors on the Hill, and we were, speaking to as many people as we possibly could about this crisis. This was happening long before the pandemic. I hear a lot of people saying, the pandemic. This was happening long before that. But we should never have to have our loved ones arrested to get mental health help. Or we should not be using our jails as mental health hospitals. I have a personal experience with mental health, on so many levels. I lost my brother, my sister, and my brother-in-law all within a couple of months of each other. And I was struggling with my own mental health from massive grief, and I could not get help. If your mayor can't get help, who can get help? Yeah. And so I had to do something incredibly different in my city. I also watched my brother struggle for years and years, and I had to call the police on him to get him into the system, which to me was a joke. And so we have a long, long way to go, but mayors are finally tackling it, and we're saying that the system is incredibly broken, has been for a long time.
Jason Kander, you have a pretty amazing story as well. People listening in the state of Missouri probably know who you are. You ran for Senate in 2016, narrowly lost that race to Republican Roy Blunt. You ran for mayor of Kansas City in 2018. You were widely expected to win that race, but dropped out before the election to seek treatment for depression and PTSD. As we mentioned, you're a veteran of Afghanistan. Tell us more about your story, and do you think that mental illness is the number one crisis facing America?
Well, first of all, Mayor Schieve, thanks for saying all the nice things. I appreciate your leadership on this issue for sure. I'd say it's probably tied with guns. But I know that's not what this episode's about. So,
connected in some ways, probably.
It's very
too.
Connected. If you do something about guns, you're going to do something about a lot of suicides. So absolutely. My own story, you pretty well covered it. The very short version is just that I'm a guy who in 2018 went from getting ready to run for president to feeling like, something has been really wrong for quite a few years, and it seems to be getting wronger up in my brain. And it was untreated, undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder from my time in Afghanistan. But I hadn't acknowledged that. So I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go home to Kansas City. I'm going to stop being on airplanes all the time. I'm going to go back to my hometown. I'm going to become mayor, and that's going to fill up the hole inside me. But spoiler alert, that didn't work. So after 99 days of that campaign, I decided that what I really needed to do was to go to the VA and get help. And I'm glad that I did that. I did that because my suicidal ideations were becoming frequent enough to scare me. And I have a family, and I wanted to be around for them. And now, I would say ironically, but I don't think it's ironic actually, now that I'm in a post-traumatic growth phase of my life, I've actually made a far greater impact on the world in a positive way over the last 5 years, not just with my own family, but on the world as a whole, since I got help, much more so than I did in the 10 years that I was an elected office. So I'm a big proponent of dealing with your stuff.
How much more difficult, though, was that for you to do that in such a public way? I mean, you were all over the news when you had to go and seek help.
It was difficult. And look, I mean, I had gone a lot of years convincing myself that there was no way I could have PTSD. A big part of that was because the Army had told me what it tells every soldier, which is what you're doing is no big deal. And that's important. You got to tell soldiers that, because if not, we won't go do frightening and dangerous soldier things. The problem is they don't, when you leave, say, like, actually, it was kind of a big deal. So that was one part of it. But there was also an element for sure of, I had a lot of people, including President Obama, suggesting that maybe I could be commander-in-chief, and I had an inkling that perhaps people wouldn't be down with the idea of a commander-in-chief who had violent nightmares every night, hadn't had a good night's sleep in 10 years, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I was incentivized to hide it from myself because I really couldn't tell it to the rest of the world. So it was not easy, but it was absolutely the right choice.
Let me ask each of you the question that we're asking our listeners this hour, which is, how do you tend to your mental health now? Mayor Schieve, you talked about how difficult it was for you. And by the way, let me give the phone number to people, 844-4-MIDDLE. It's 844-464-3353. Mayor Schieve, you talked about how difficult it was for you in the beginning as you were dealing with the grief of the loss of 3 family members. How about now?
Well, and you talked about how do the holidays make you feel, right? I think especially for those of us who have lost loved ones, the holidays are incredibly difficult. And, during the pandemic, one of the things that I did is I took CARES Act dollars and I got subscriptions to every single person in my community for Talkspace, because I wanted to make sure that they had access. Because I think there's also a big misnomer out there that if you have health insurance, you can get access or that you can get it paid for. It's incredibly difficult, even if you have health insurance. But there are some staggering numbers out right now. And what was interesting about us doing that as a city is that half of the people that did Talkspace out of 5,000 had never sought therapy before. So it tells you how many people in my community, were struggling. We also saw this very young demographic from 16 to 24. And right now we're seeing numbers of 49% of ages 18 to 24 are saying they're struggling with PTSD and anxiety. And so when we look at those numbers, how many of them will self-medicate, use those kinds of things? And so it's incredibly challenging. I would say this too, for me, I had to put myself on a content diet. It was the best thing I ever did for my mental health. I think technology can be a wonderful thing, but it can also be an incredibly damaging thing. I also always say I never knew how fat, ugly, and stupid I was till I got on Facebook. But my point is that helped me dramatically deal with my own mental health. And I just appreciate Jason so much and being so vulnerable, because especially in politics, that is a very difficult thing to admit.
Well, and we're going to get, I'm sure, to social media as we go forward. We're going to be taking your calls at 844-4-MIDDLE. Tolliver, 1 in 8 U.S. adults now takes an antidepressant. 1 in 5 has recently received some kind of mental health care. That's according to the CDC.
Yeah, Jeremy. And one reason more people are seeking treatment is because of those who have fought against the stigma of mental illness, like former First Lady Rosalind Carter, who was just laid to rest. Here she is in 1998 talking with C-SPAN about the unwillingness of the press to cover mental health issues when she was First Lady.
One day I was walking in the downstairs floor in the White House and met this woman who was one of the press people. And I said, nobody ever covers my meetings. And she said, Ms. Carter, mental health is just not a sexy issue. and that I didn't like.
Rosalind Carter, a mental health advocate for many decades after her time in the White House.
And by the way, Tolliver, Judy Woodruff of the PBS NewsHour actually spoke at Rosalind Carter's funeral.
Oh, wow.
She is going to be on the Middle next week. So stay tuned for that. And stay tuned right now. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. I'm joined by Reno, Nevada Mayor Hillary Schieve, president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and Jason Kander, author of Invisible Storm, a soldier's memoir of politics and PTSD. He's with us from Kansas City, Missouri. We're asking you, how do you tend to your mental health, and do you have access to the care you need? Tolliver, what is that number again?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353.
And I'm going to go to the phones right now. Harper is joining us from Houston, Texas. Harper, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for picking me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Tell us, how do you tend to your mental health, and do you have the access to the care you need?
I feel like recently I've been put into a really valuable position with my mental health. About a year ago, I was struggling pretty heavily with substance abuse and self-harm and suicidal ideation. But I got into some legal trouble, which was actually kind of really important to my recovery with like all that. And I got put into AA and some other programs that have been really helpful with me just moving forward with my life, and I'm in a better place now. So I would say that because of all that, I do have the access I need.
That's great. That's great to hear. So being able to speak about, especially the substance abuse with others in organizations like AA, that's been very helpful to you.
Oh, definitely. Great.
Harper, thank you so much for that call. Let me go to the mayor on that. Mayor, AA is something that exists all over this country, and every city and town probably around this country has something like that. How important are those organizations in terms of people who are seeking help?
Yeah, well, they're incredibly important. I mean, any organization that is willing to step into the field of mental health or addiction, I mean, we need everyone sort of working together on this. But, cities need to be much more comprehensive when it comes to treatment and accessibility. One of the things that I really believe is that every single school in America needs access to mental health right on their campus, so any student can walk right in and get it. And then also, the other thing is what's challenging with getting people services, especially in government. It can take an incredibly long time. And for me, I've been working on getting ready to open, and it's taken 7 years now, but I'm so glad that we're finally opening it. But it's basically a 24/7 ER. And think about that. There is not, I don't know of any 24/7 ERs whenever it comes to mental health where you can
the
just
ER is just for mental health, you're saying?
Yeah, just for mental health, because I often say that hospitals are where they fix broken bones, not broken brains, and they're not equipped to handling a lot of mental health and addiction issues. Matter of fact, a lot of times we see that people are turned away, or let's say they're put on a 72-hour hold because, they're having suicidal ideations, whatever that looks like. And a lot of times they're turning them away and they're at their most vulnerable state. I mean, we basically call that patient dumping. And so that's why cities need to understand it's important to have that infrastructure in place, especially like with my brother. I didn't know where to take him, what to do with him whenever he was having a full-blown, mental health breakdown. And so we have to give people the tools. And so in my city, basically what we're doing is taking every single provider and nonprofit and government agency, putting them under one roof. So all the services are accessible to everyone at the same time.
Jason Kander, in terms of people who are dealing with PTSD, of which there are very, very many, are the organizations that help people talk through that around in the way that Alcoholics Anonymous is?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are trauma therapists all over this country. I mean, one of the problems we have is that as a matter of policy nationwide, with regard to the way we regulate the world of insurance, we don't, to a full enough extent, treat physical health and mental health as the same. We really ought to just treat them both as health. We can do a better job of that. That said, yeah, look, there's all sorts of trauma therapists all over the place that do all sorts of different kinds of trauma therapy. And what I would tell anybody who's listening to this, who is thinking that maybe trauma is something they need to deal with, I would tell them, one, if you think maybe trauma is something you need to deal with, then trauma is something you need to deal with. And two, that you should go try a therapist, and if that therapist doesn't work for you, you should try the next one, and you should continue to try over and over and over again, because it will make a difference, because post-traumatic growth is a real thing. This stuff really works, and the problem is that we don't see enough depictions of that. I appreciate very much what you're doing right now by having us here. You're depicting the idea that this kind of thing can help. But if you think about the way particularly PTSD is portrayed in the news, but especially when it comes to like on screen, I refer to it as PTSD porn. It's mostly voyeurism. It is most pictures of PTSD are a dude who looks like me, who did the kind of job I did in Afghanistan, except he's beating his wife and robbing a bank and then shooting up. And that's what people think PTSD is. But the truth is that everywhere you go, like aliens in the movie Men in Black, you are surrounded by people who have been to trauma therapy, and it no longer disrupts their life. But it's like this big secret. And so the answer is yes, there are resources all around you, and you need to reach out for them, because it will change your life for the better and allow you to live your life.
Mayor Schieve, I actually have a question for you. My mother has struggled with schizophrenia since I was like 3 years old. She's in a very decrepit state-run facility in Illinois. In your city, would you say this issue is just a matter of resources?
No, this is so complex, incredibly complex. One of the things that I would say, and why we're seeing, such high numbers of homelessness and addiction, is the infrastructure has not been put in place. A lot of people think that they're, people living out on the streets, that there is some place to go. There is no place to take anyone, and we don't have the mental health capacity to really treat this to the magnitude that we need it, especially if you are schizophrenic. Some of the most difficult illnesses that we do see in mental health. And I just honestly think that it has been such a stigma. No one really wants to talk about it or address it. That's why I was talking about Jason being so incredibly vulnerable. You're starting to see more people come out and talk about it, like Fetterman and others. But I think especially in government, it has been something they don't want to touch because it is perceived as maybe a weakness, right?
Let's go to another call. Robert is joining us from North Carolina. Robert, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hey there. I'm a relatively new listener. I really do appreciate you guys' show. Just wanted to say that first.
Thank you.
But I know you're welcome. You guys spoke about medications earlier, but I think there needs to be, to me, that's the 500-pound gorilla in the room is medications. I think you guys said 1 of 8 Americans. I had researched it before, and I found it was closer to 20% of Americans. Of course, that was counting also Adderall and Ritalin, for ADHD as well. But the fact is there's millions and millions of us that are on these medications, and the long-term effects is, I think, a special area of concern, because the way I understand is the pharmaceutical corporations, they do really short-term studies to say, hey, this helps people, and they're, of course, in it for the profit. I have 2 really close friends that have been on different types of antidepressants close to 30 years, and they're not really sure if they're helping. And it's to me, it's just there's no studies on how these medications are affecting our brains and bodies, after taking it for decades and decades.
Robert, thank you for that call. And let me go to Jason Kander on that, because, it's not just the medications, although I want to ask your thoughts on that. It's not just the medications. I've been researching about some of these apps that people are using now for their mental health, that there's not really a lot of good evidence about whether those work or not, especially if they're not combined with an actual therapist. But what are your thoughts on medications?
Well, my thought on all of this, whether it's apps, medication, whatever, first I'll caveat, I'm not a clinician.
Right.
I'm just a vet with PTSD who happened to already be kind of famous when he told the world that he had PTSD. That is my entire set of qualifications, and I've been to a fair amount of therapy. And what I would say is go to a therapist. And if the therapist feels that you should go to the type of therapist, a psychiatrist, who I always get psychiatrists and psychologists backwards, whatever, the ones who can prescribe medicine, well, then do that too. And if your therapist feels like, hey, this app might be good for you, or this guided meditation might be good for you, or exercise might be good for you, or this medication, well, then give that a shot. And if it's not working, then go to a different doctor. And because the one thing that Robert said that I would push back on slightly, I'm not out here, I don't work for a pharmaceutical company. It's not my job to push this stuff. What I would say is that if your friends who have been on an antidepressant for a long time and have struggled with severe depression are still alive, then it's been doing some decent stuff for their brain. Now look, every medication has side effects. And again, I'm not a clinician, but these are all things that you figure out as you go along. And your job is to try and figure out what makes you feel better. And it's okay to use that as the standard. What makes you feel better? I don't usually, in my book, the one thing I didn't get into was the question of medication, because I didn't really need somebody who read my book and felt like it might inspire them to go get help to then measure themselves against whether I did or did not end up taking medication, because it doesn't matter, because it's not a contest. The point is to figure out a way to get past your trauma and to have doctors help you do that.
Let's go to Jesse, who is calling from Springfield, Illinois. Jesse, welcome to The Middle.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. So how do you tend to your mental health?
Well, luckily, I've been able to find a great therapist that I go to a couple days a month, kind of every other week at this point, and then I do take antidepressants.
Mm-hmm. And it's worked for you?
And so it's working. It's getting there. Some days are better than others, but it's definitely trial and error. Over my life, I've had to try different things, and right now this seems to be the best practice.
How difficult was it for you to actually find a therapist? Because that can be a challenge.
It is. I was lucky enough to find one after a couple of tries, reaching out, getting someone available. I have friends that now are on like a 6-month hold to try to get even in their first appointment, because there's a lot of people that are so booked or backed up on even just trying to get first appointments with therapists.
Jesse, thank you so much for your call. Mayor Schieve, you've talked about how difficult it is to find the care that you need.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's like I said, here I was struggling with my own. When I called therapists, I didn't tell them I was the mayor, obviously, for a couple of reasons. I didn't want to be treated differently, but I also, it was a stigma point. And I think, what Jason said, there are so many different ways in which to handle it. And for a lot of people, medication may not work. It never worked for my sister or my brother. And then I have friends that do art therapy, that exercise extensively. And so you have to keep at trying the things that possibly work for you and not give up hope. Some people, that's the other thing. Some people will do really well on medication and then all of a sudden say, I don't need to take this anymore. Mm-hmm. And then we see where there can be disastrous outcomes because of that. But there are a lot of people that don't want to take medication, and that's okay depending on what really works for you. But access is really, really hard. But that's another thing that mayors are addressing, because we really are at ground zero of this issue. We're seeing it in our jails and our ERs. Mm-hmm. At alarming rates. And so we're really working on the accessibility like we've never seen before. But we also need a lot of help, from the federal government to understand that cities are at ground zero, and we need help from our governors, because a lot of what people don't understand, the money to treat this literally never comes to cities. And so we have to be really innovative and creative how we get people access. Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Egan in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Hi, Egan. Welcome to The Middle.
Good evening. Listening to this conversation, I wanted to drop in and say that I have survived mental illness, specifically schizophrenia, in my 20s, when that's 50 years ago. And I wondered if this national conversation can turn to the idea of mental health volunteers, people who have survived mental illness, who have found a life-affirming mental health, and who are able now to contribute to some hopefulness that people who are struggling with their mental health to help them. And that's all I wanted to say is, has anyone ever even thought of some kind of a volunteer agency of people who have survived it?
Egan, thank you. Jason Kander, that is something that you're in a way doing with your organization.
Yeah, thanks for the segue to a plug of Veterans Community Project, where I'm president of National Expansion. We are a band of veterans who work with other veterans to fight veterans homelessness and veterans suicide, and we set up campuses around the country. So yes, in that way, and certainly in the way that myself and most of the leadership are just a bunch of people with PTSD, so it's a pretty interesting place to work. But I would say that, one, I think it's a great idea, but two, I don't think it needs to necessarily be formal for people like Egan to start taking action. The thing about dispelling a stigma is that if you have struggled with something or think you might be struggling with something, you don't need hundreds of thousands of social media followers or a platform or an office to make a difference in other people's lives. We all live very public lives to some extent or another at this point. And even if you're not even on social media, if you got like 5 coworkers or 2 neighbors, if you are outward with them, if you are just transparent with them about what you have either struggled with in the past or are struggling with now, a couple of things are going to happen. One, you are going to relieve yourself, as I found out, of the burden to put on the Egan suit, in Egan's case, or for me to put on the Jason Kander suit and put on a certain display or a certain show and just be able to be yourself and be able to deal with your stuff. But for the other people, what you do is you may very well give them a permission slip to get help. You really cannot underestimate how many people, just you saying out loud, like if you leave work and you say, like, I'm going to go see my therapist, you might save one of your coworkers' lives because you just normalized it for them. And I wish that everybody who had ever been public about dealing with their own mental health had the incredible privilege that I've had, which is to have people on a regular basis come up and say, what you did saved my life. You don't have to be known for that to happen.
Tolliver, we've been talking about mental health and politics a bit, but more and more these days, people in many industries, from music to sports, are speaking publicly about their own mental health challenges.
Yeah, Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles actually withdrew from the 2020 Tokyo Olympics to tend to her mental health.
I say put mental health first, because if you don't, then you're not going to enjoy your sport and you're not going to succeed as much as you want to. So it's okay sometimes to even sit out the big competitions to focus on yourself, because it shows how strong of a competitor and person that you really are, rather than just battle through it.
And yeah, she's made a dramatic comeback. Simone Biles, shout out to her. She says that being intentional about her time has helped her prepare to compete next year in the Olympics in Paris.
And we will be right back after this break on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world. The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured 2 prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to Ray, Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place, a story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're talking about how to tend to our mental health and whether there are adequate resources. Our number is 844-4-MIDDLE. You can also reach out to us online at listentothemiddle.com. Our guests are Reno, Nevada Mayor Hillary Schieve, who's president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and Jason Kander, Missouri's former Secretary of State, an Army veteran, author of Invisible Storm, a soldier's memoir of politics and PTSD. Let's get to the phones, and Colleen is joining us from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. Hi, Colleen. Go ahead.
Hi there. I just wanted to thank you for this great conversation and also do a shout out to peer support groups that help so many thousands of people around the United States. I'm a 43-year member of a group called Emotions Anonymous. We have hundreds of meetings around the country and internationally, and they're run by peers, others who have suffered from the same issues and challenges, and who are interested in just sharing their journey and roughly following the 12 steps that are derived from Alcoholics Anonymous. But that's a good way to have sort of a facilitated conversation and also take advantage of people who have been there to have informal discussions and encouragement. That's saved my life, really.
Colleen, thank you so much for that call. And let's go to Matt in Colorado. Matt, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me. First of all, I want to say I think this program is really important because for someone like me, I was raised in a far-right household and didn't have a chance to find the middle until I was an adult. And that's like part of my mental health journey because mental health was super stigmatized in my household. And therapy was a thing that was antithetical to religion, which is what I was raised to find healing in. And it turns out, as an adult, I was diagnosed years of therapy when I was like in a real crisis. And I think one thing that's important for people to know is that different mental health issues need different kinds of therapy. And so for me, with my OCD journey, I found out that talk therapy wasn't necessarily the thing that I needed. And I needed to do like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a very different kind of therapy than talk therapy. And because it was so stigmatized, I just had no idea that all of these different avenues for help existed. And so I don't know. I think it's really important for people to know that there's all sorts of different kinds of therapy, and the more we stigmatize it, the more it mystifies how helpful it can actually be to explore different kinds of therapy and receive different kinds of help.
Matt, thank you for that call. Mayor Schieve, I just want to go to something that Matt said a moment ago about sort of finding the middle and the politics of it. You're a nonpartisan mayor. Do you think that the sort of polarized politics, especially of the last many years, have contributed to this crisis?
Oh, absolutely. I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, you have both sides fighting with each other. You have a government that is incredibly fragmented. Matter of fact, now you have both sides fighting with each other. You know, if you're a Democrat, you're fighting with Democrats. If you're a Republican, you're fighting with other Republicans. I mean, there is a lot of discourse in this country over that, and we're hearing it more and more. A lot of people have said to me, hey, I'm becoming a nonpartisan because I feel like it's better for my mental health. And this isn't, I think most people do feel that this isn't about parties. This is about people. This is about lives. So I think he is spot on. I would also say this too. It's important to understand the kinds of mental health issues you're dealing with. Like there's chemical depression, there's also situational depression. And so there are different ways to treat it. Like the caller just said, he's exactly right. And peer support groups we're finding are so beneficial amongst teens and young adults. So there is hope out there. But I would say absolutely, I think a lot of people have struggled with their mental health because of politics.
You know, I don't like to make promises I can't keep, and I did promise that we were going to talk about social media. So let me go to Jason Kander with this question. I mean, we talked about how politics has played into this. What about social media? I read, now I got to find this statistic, but 95% of teens between the age of 13 and 17 say they use a social media platform, and a third of those say that they are scrolling, posting, or otherwise engaged with social media almost constantly. How, and of course, that's not just teens, it's everyone at this point. How much do you think social media has played into lack of mental health in this country?
I think it's obviously a huge part of it, right? I mean, because the promise of social media initially was that it was going to create a greater sense of community. And there have been ways in which it's the case. I mean, if you just look at the way it has moved forward, things like activism, in a lot of ways that has created a greater sense of community, but you could also argue a greater sense of polarization. But sadly, what it also creates is a real sense of isolation, because you are getting this substitute for being around human beings, but it's really not the same at all. And it's bland. And the other thing is, like, I'm sure the mayor can attest to this too, is that when you are a public figure, you particularly notice that when something flows through people's fingertips, they have a much less of a filter than when it flows over their lips. And that applies. Yes. And you don't have to be a public figure to know that you need to have literally stated your opinion on social media about anything ever. And that obviously hurts it. But what I really think all of this goes back to is a great sense of loneliness in this country right now. And I think that has a lot to do with the polarization. And if I were to track that back to any individual thing, it would have to be the fact that Americans just don't have a whole lot in common anymore. I mean, look, this is the longest consecutive period in American history without some form of mandatory service. And I'm not suggesting that we bring back the draft, but I am saying that until just a few generations ago, it was quite normal that when you went to work in the morning, any person you were going to run into got the same news as you last night. There was a 1 in 3 chance they got it from the same newscaster. And if you brought up a major event like World War II or Vietnam, there was a decent chance that you could start a conversation with that person, particularly if it was a couple of men, with, well, where did you serve? And now, like, it's kind of hard to figure out what Americans share in common other than we all love Taylor Swift, and 1 in 3 of us watch the Super Bowl. So it's like we're losing that sense of community, and that's leading to a great sense of sadness and loneliness.
Yeah. Let's go to Sasha, who's in Las Vegas. Hi, Sasha. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead. Tell us, how do you tend to your mental health, or do you think you have the resources you need in your community to do so?
Yeah, so I'm actually a medical student and currently on my psychiatry rotation. So I kind of got a very good look at and understanding what the resources we have in our community are. And I will say, I feel like it's pretty difficult to access resources where I am.
Really?
A lot of people I see, it's unfortunate because a lot of people I see in the hospital, they have a lot of comorbid medical conditions, but the real problem, the root of the issue a lot of the time is something untreated that's related to their mental health, whether that's depression or something more severe like schizophrenia. That can make it really difficult for them to remember to take their medications for high blood pressure or high cholesterol. And one interesting thing I learned is actually that the number one cause of death for people with schizophrenia is actually heart disease, because the bigger issue is that they're not able to take care of their physical health because their mental health is not getting treated.
Sasha, thank you for that call. And let me get another one in here. Aaron is in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yes.
Hi, Aaron. Go ahead. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi. I wanted to just call in for a couple of reasons. I'm a therapist, and I worked with folks especially recovering from PTSD for about 30 years, but a range of different mental health issues. And I appreciate both of your guest contributions and their courage and determination to talk about this broadly. I also want to highlight a couple of ways it can be easier for people to find good care One is the organization NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, which is essentially the organization that one of your previous guests asked, like, is there such a thing? Where folks who had these experiences and family members provide support for people who are experiencing mental health struggles, or a family member who's having a mental health struggle, which is an enormous resource, and they do a huge amount of advocacy as well. And there are therapist directories online. People can talk to their friends about how to find someone that works with what they work with. But a lot of folks get really discouraged, and it's very painful to go therapist to therapist. So I want to encourage people to look for a good fit before they go and start opening up things that are very painful.
Well, and Erin, let me just ask you briefly, since you are a therapist, have you noticed an uptick in people that need your help in the last few years?
I can't even tell you how much of an uptick. And it began in 2016 when a large portion of our society felt an enormous amount of fear and a sense of the unknown. I've worked in conflict and post-conflict zones where government is extremely skeletal, and I started seeing for the first time things I had seen many, many times, but never in my own country. It was quite shocking to see the ways that when your sense of your civilization is destabilized, your sense of being able to kind of predict and know tomorrow is going to be kind of like today goes away. And that is profoundly essential to our sense of mental health and our sense of well-being.
Yeah. Erin, thank you very much for that call. Mayor Schieve, I want to ask you a question, which is, given your own personal and family history, when you are walking down the street, let's say in Reno or in any city in this country, and you encounter someone who is dealing with mental illness, maybe even in a way that makes you feel unsafe, which many people in this country do these days, what do you do, or what do you think? Are you more sympathetic to that person, or are you afraid for your own safety, or how do you handle that?
First of all, Jeremy, the first caller, she was from Las Vegas, so she's in the state of Nevada. I wanted to point this out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nevada actually ranks one of the last on the list when it comes to mental health. And so, thank God for her getting into this field, because that's the other thing, is we're seeing such a massive shortage of the workforce when it comes to mental health care workers. So kudos to her. But I also wanted to point that out in Nevada. And so it's been incredibly difficult. Listen, I think that you have to... I come from a long history of watching my brother and my sister struggle with mental health, so I understand it whenever I see it. And it's amazing to me how many people we allow to die on our streets because of mental illness, like I said, whether it's schizophrenia or addiction or those types of things. And so I think that's where, we've lost a sense of compassion for others, and to understand that, I'll never forget when my sister was dying of cancer, she said to me, Hillary, I would much rather have cancer than depression. And that's how debilitating it was. So if we can all step outside ourselves and actually put yourself in someone else's shoes, you might walk with a little bit more compassion. But I see it all too often that we just allow people to be, laying on the ground screaming. And let's say this man is saying, hey, I have appendicitis. What do? We take him to the hospital, we get him surgery, we get him fixed. What if someone's laying on the ground screaming he's got schizophrenia? You know what we do? We leave them there. But in my community, we're taking massive efforts to change all that.
Let's go to Caroline in Pittsburgh. Hi, Caroline. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi. So what I called about is PTSD treatment and how it's so very different for instance, veterans. I know one of your guests is a veteran, right. As compared to women dealing with domestic abuse, which is what I had to deal with. And the thing is that most people think, that EMDR is the solution for PTSD, which is what I thought. And I found that it was actually quite harmful for me. And I had very bad side effects. And in my own subsequent research, I found that, for instance, Judith Herman who is a contemporary of the author of The Body Keeps the Score, has come out with an entire treatment for women dealing with PTSD coming from domestic abuse or rape or other things of that nature. And I just wanted to clarify that. What I do for my own mental health, and I found that talk therapy completely failed me. And 5 therapists between myself and my husband completely failed us, my former husband. And what I have found is,
Caroline, let me take your comment. We've got it. Let me take it to Jason Kander, who of course focuses on PTSD. Jason Kander, it's not a one size fits all situation, obviously.
No, look, I mean, I'll just tell my own story. I mean, I went to the VA where they have, 2 really main evidence-based therapies that they do, and then a third is EMDR. And the first 2 that I did something called prolonged exposure therapy, which is basically just sitting in the really bad stuff and talking about it until it doesn't have the same kind of grip on you. It's quite unpleasant, but for me, quite effective. And then cognitive processing therapy, which is more like going to grad school. It's like sitting there and talking about what you're feeling, what your symptoms are, and then having your therapist stand up in front of a whiteboard and kind of teach you about why your brain is doing what it's doing so that you can better understand it. And those were very effective for me. My therapist told me that had those 2 not worked, he probably would have tried EMDR. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, my wife I gave her the great gift of secondary PTSD, which people can Google. That's a real thing. And she did somatic experience therapy, which worked very well for her. There's a whole bunch of different stuff out there. But what I would want to emphasize, actually, based on what the caller was saying, is that I think this is really important, is that there's a whole bunch of different kinds of trauma. And it kind of, this is going to sound insensitive, but I don't mean it this way. It kind of doesn't matter what kind of trauma you experienced. Because Nina Contest and I went to war, and she was a victim of domestic violence. They're both trauma. And we have a tendency to try to gain perspective over our own trauma by thinking about other people's trauma. But the thing is, our brain doesn't care because our brain didn't experience their trauma. And one of the things that I feel is my job in this world of talking about this is to make sure that we have done a lot to knock down the stigma for veterans to get help for PTSD. Right. That people understand that it's not a veteran thing; it's an anybody thing.
Right. Well, I just want to point out one thing, which is that we did mention suicide in this show. And so I just want to give out the number 988 if you're really in crisis. That's the new number that you can call for help. I want to thank my guests so much. Jason Kander, politician, Army veteran, podcast host of Majority 54 and an author, and Hillary Schieve, the mayor of Reno, Nevada, president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Thanks so much to you both.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And thanks to KNPR in Reno for hosting the mayor. Tolliver, we have an amazing show coming up next week.
Yes, we are talking about democracy. We're asking listeners if they think democracy itself is at stake in next year's election.
And the great Judy Woodruff of PBS NewsHour is going to be here. And by the way, Tolliver, as you know, we have a weekly newsletter. It is free. People can sign up for updates at listentothemiddle.com.
We also have a podcast. It's available in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Joanne Jennings, John Barth, Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, and Charlie Little. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig. Thanks to KNPR, of course. Thanks to Nashville Public Radio, iHeartMedia, and the more than 370 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969, Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping on another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. See Kane Brown, Parker McCollum, Riley Green, Shabuzi, Dylan Scott, Russell Dickerson, Gretchen Wilson, Chase Matthew, Lauren Elena. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.